Another say share the love. Embracing the differences like hand in glove. Peace and joy, it's a beautiful sight. Together we shine in each other's light. Now we stand in love's pure might. Watching the world share in love and light.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Watching the World in the Morning. News and coffee. We have quite the news for you this morning. A lot of things happening, especially with the storm. A lot of people we know are from Jamaica. Their family members are going through it with this Category 5 storm. We have Drabanat in the building. Shout out to you, Drabanat. Thank you for the continued support. Yesterday, I covered how there's so many changes when it comes to the government. A lot of people are being affected, especially when it comes to food stamps and Section 8. Some 40 million people are being affected just with food stamps alone. Yesterday, I hired a fella. He was in a shelter with his family or whatnot. But I overheard some of the conversation that he was having, and I was really touched by it because I'm like, wow. Maybe I'm a little far removed from reality, but being in the shelter, also their family, they utilize food stamps, right? So dig this. I overheard them talking about how on November 1st, well, we covered yesterday, you will not receive your food stamps if you're on it. 40 million people. But lo and behold, if, according to what they're saying, right, they have a card, and the card will be shut down on the first two. So if you have some reserve built up for your food stamps, you will not be able to access those funds. And so I overheard them negotiating, well, we should buy the food now, so maybe we could freeze it so that after the first, when we no longer can use the card, we could still survive. These are real life experiences that people are going through. Now, I did not confirm they could have been inaccurate in some way, but it seemed like they know what they were talking about. So there's a lot happening. So we're going to go through a few of the hot topics in the morning in the news stories. I don't know if you heard about it, Sean Diddy Combs. As many of you know, I've covered that case. I went to the courthouse 8 weeks. And if you want to include the jury selection, I was there 9 weeks. Every morning I would go live at 6 a.m. A lot of you probably, that's where you picked up on the channel from. Well, it came out in the news yesterday that Sean Diddy Combs, I'm going to share this piece with you. It came out that his release date after the 50 months that he was sentenced will be May the 8th, 2028. Okay, so he had quite some time to serve in prison. Although we did hear last week that he might be pardoned by none other than Donald Trump. We heard that from the likes of TMZ, but as far as what the White House has officially said by means of NBC, I believe, they said no, he will not be pardoned. But let's see, there may be some truth to it. Let me explain to you why I think TMZ has an inside track. When I was at the courthouse, I rubbed shoulders with Mark Garagos. Mark Garagos is Tenny Garagos' father. He does a show with Harvey from TMZ. It's called The Angry Men. And so he has pretty much an inside track. When the case initially started, he was there, Mark Garagos, in the courtroom. A lot of people felt like he was a silent partner or silent defender of Diddy. And what I learned about it just from observing him throughout the trial when he did show up, right? It seemed to me that he was the angle that really changed the way the media looked at this whole Sean Diddy Combs case. In fact, I think it's his presence and those who really use the media that was able to help sway those who did not like Diddy too much. A lot of them started to change their position. I saw that in the beginning stages of the trial, when if someone said, "Hey, we support you," to Diddy's family, people would get hysterical. "Hey, why are you supporting this family?" And then a lot of people would even talk bad about his mother. All of that, or most of it, tended to change over time. I think a lot of that is because the defense did a good job on a ground game of really influencing the media to change the perception. Now, a lot of people who look at this for what it was, they couldn't get over the video, and rightly so, because they saw the domestic violence and definitely all of the abuse. So, Sean Diddy Combs is expected to come home May 8th, 2028. Let's move on now. We're going to talk about what's happening in Jamaica. I have a lot of friends in Jamaica, and their family members are actually going through it. Let's try to understand the path of what's really happening with this tremendous Category 5, I believe, hurricane. I saw some videos on social media. Sometimes you have to kind of take it easy with social media. I saw sharks in pools. It was crazy what I saw. But sometimes AI is in the mix, so we just have to be judicious in totally what we believe in. Oh, wow. AI Med Spa is in the building. Thank you very much. He says, clear blue skies on a lovely Tuesday. Tell us where you're tuning in from, but let's get to it.
And breaking at this hour, we have 3 confirmed dead now in Jamaica. And a reminder, we already had deaths from Haiti and the Dominican Republic. So in total, the death toll has risen to 7. And we still have an extremely dangerous scenario that's.
Now, I didn't pick up on Haiti and the Dominican Republic until I actually heard this article, this briefing here. But they had 3 deaths there, and Jamaica is really being pounded as we speak.
Unfolding for Jamaica. It has not made a landfall. It is still hundreds of miles south of Jamaica. They're feeling tropical storm force winds, but ultimately they could see a storm surge up to 13 feet, rainfall up to 3 feet, if not.
It's that storm surge that causes most of the catastrophes, because that water starts coming in, especially a lot of times when the storm is coming through, people think, okay, now it's dying down and they feel safe. And that's when those waters and those storm surges come in, and it could prove to be quite deadly.
Greater than that. And then we talk about the wind component. So this shows you how devastating these storms can be. And this is before the worst of it has even moved in. We'll continue to get you those updates. Here is the time frame looking at midday tomorrow.
Okay, so AI Med Spa is in the 203 in Connecticut. You're one of my neighbors.
For that potential landfall. But as this plays out, it's going to move up into Cuba. Overall, it's 160 miles wide, the island of Jamaica. And notice from
160 miles wide, moving, quite frankly, at 2 miles an hour. A slow and steady pounding. This is terrible, folks.
The western tip to the eastern tip, hurricane force winds are expected, along with the other factors like that storm surge and rain. And this is something that we will watch unfold in the hours and days.
Okay, we're definitely going to be covering it. I'll be covering it today at news at noon. We'll see how the storm is progressing. Hopefully, people can get out of the storm way and save their lives. Let's look at a few live feeds here with the storm. So it looks like they're trying to hunker down here at this gas station. You can tell that the winds are really firm. Okay, so stay tuned. We're going to continue to cover the storm, let you know what's happening, see how much we'll be affected here in the United States, if any. We're going to move on now. We're going to discuss what's happening. Last week, I went down to the courthouse, right, the federal courthouse in Brooklyn, to cover the Chauncey Billups case. Now, he was actually brought into, I believe, Portland or what have you, but his co-defendants, a lot of them were coming into New York City, into Brooklyn, to the federal courthouse. So I was there covering that for you. Chauncey Billups will be in Brooklyn on November the 24th. I looked at the chart, so I definitely will be bringing you the latest news in regards to the case. Now, ESPN has put out pretty much a breakdown of what's happening with this case. So we're going to go through that this morning to see if we can glean some of the legal parameters that they're using to try to put the screws to Chauncey. We keep hearing the rumors and the breakdown of how this is tied to the mob, the mafia, which a lot of us feel like that's the mafia is an old school type of thing, not really realizing how they're really active today and affecting society greatly. So let's get to it. And then we're going to close out with Stephen A. Smith. We know that he's pretty much the king when it comes to the sports world, but him and Chris Cuomo put out a nice feed. So we're going to go through that too. So let's check it out, folks.
Coming up on the Sports Reporters.
I know Chauncey Billups personally. I know his family. I know what kind of man he is, what kind of man he's always been. And I just find it hard to believe that he would be involved in something like this, the way the FBI has described it.
I'm Jeremy Schaap, and welcome to a special edition of the Sports Reporters. Here we are.
Before we move forward, Nessa says it will be the rain with this one. Jamaica prone to landslides and flash flooding coming off of the mountains. Thank you, Nessa, for that inside approach. Keep sharing with us. And guys, hit the like button, share, and subscribe. We need people like Nessa, who's familiar with Jamaica, to keep bringing us the inner understanding of the place.
Are now about 96 hours after those bombshell.
And one more thing. Have any of you guys ever been to Jamaica? I've been there to Ocho and Kingston, some of the places. Tell us where you're from and if you've ever been to Jamaica.
Indictments in the Eastern District of New York, and we are joined by ESPN.
Now, just so you know, the Eastern District of New York is right in Brooklyn Federal Courthouse. When I covered Sean Diddy Combs' trial, that's the Southern District. And Sean Diddy Combs, even though he's being housed in Brooklyn, he was brought into the Southern Manhattan Courthouse there at 500 Pearl Street. That's the Southern District. So the feds are broken down into the different districts.
Gambling expert and reporter David Purdom, and former NBA Coach of the Year Sam Mitchell, who also played in the league for more than a dozen years. Gentlemen, thank you so much. There's a lot to unpack here. Again, we're about 4 days removed from this big news. David, first of all, where do we stand now? What are the latest developments?
Well, today the NBA sent out a memo to all 30 teams saying they are reassessing their measures on sports betting, seeing what they need to do in order to monitor this better, what they need to do in terms of communicating with regulators on what kind of bets are more risky than others, and what they can do to help players kind of combat the harassment that they've been receiving from bettors as well. So the NBA, like you said, is 4 days past one of the biggest bombshells they've ever faced, and they're reassessing things.
Look, Sam, nobody's been around the league. Very few have been around the league longer than you. As a player, as a coach, as a commentator, when you heard this news on Thursday, as we all did, what went through your mind?
Shocked, first of all, disbelief. I got to hear more. I got to see more. I need to see the evidence. I'm just going to be transparent. I've coached Damon Jones when I was assistant coach in Milwaukee, and I played with Chauncey Billups. He's a dear friend of mine to this day. I love him. I see what he's been accused of. I don't dive too deep into the details with all this stuff because I don't get into the headlines of it. And I know Chauncey Billups personally. I know his family. I know what kind of man he is, what kind of man he's always been. And I just...
Okay, Joseph says, been saying sports is rigged for years now, but no one wants. Okay, Joseph says to believe me, shaking my head. Too much money involved. Okay.
I find it hard to believe that he would be involved in something like this, the way the FBI has described it.
You know, when you were playing and when you were coaching in the league, Sam, right? You know, the message was pretty clear, especially when David Stern was still commissioner. We don't want any part of this stuff, right? And that changed when Adam Silver became commissioner 11 years ago, 11 and a half years ago. What was the culture like around gambling in the NBA those years you were a head coach and the years you were playing?
Oh my God, it was fear. I mean, David Stern would come around once a year to all the teams, and he would just lay down the law, and he would just basically tell you, if I suspect you of gambling within the NBA, you're done. You won't play overseas. You won't play anywhere. And so they would drill that message into us all the time.
Some of you big sports fans, are you shocked that it involved a coach, though? I think that's what's key here.
And look, I understand the evolution of things, the money. The players get 50% of every dollar that comes into the NBA. And gambling is a big part of our society and sports now. It's been legal in football for the longest. So I understand Adam bringing it in. And we also understood the potential of things like this could happen. And so at the end of the day, it comes down to personal responsibility. The NBA does a great job of educating coaches and players to not do it. In my personal experience, and when I talk to people about this, while you're an active player or a coach, just stay away from the gambling on any sport and all things. Look, being a professional athlete or a coach is a short period of your life. Right? I'm 60 years old. I've been out of the NBA a lot longer than I've been on this earth. And so you have ample time to indulge in all the things that you want to do. But again, from my point of view, I don't know about all this other stuff, but I need to see more proof. And I need to see my friend Chauncey Billups say that he was involved in something like this in the depths in which they're saying.
Have you had any contact with him the last few days?
No. And I mean, Chauncey and I normally would talk during the season. He would often text me what I see with his team and stuff. And I do that with a lot of my coaches' friends. I would not call him during this time. He needs to be with his attorneys. He needs to be with his family and making sure that he does everything he can to defend himself. And, you know, that would just be, on my part, I would be being nosy. If he needs to reach out to me, he's heard what I've said. I've texted him the same things that I've said to you guys and I've said publicly. That's my friend, right, wrong, or indifferent. I'm going to support him. Either way this thing falls. You know, if he's found to have been involved in this, he's still going to be my friend. I'm still going to love him. And I don't discard my friends for making mistakes. But again, until you show me more, I just don't believe it.
And Chauncey Billups, right, Sam, is a widely beloved figure in basketball. Yes. Very popular. Now, David.
To me, that's shocking on the federal case that he was said, because, and I'm only putting it side by side with Sean Diddy Combs' case, because when he went to court, I noticed I was there every day in the main courtroom sitting behind Diddy. Only Kanye West and maybe just a few people came in outside of the family. You didn't hear anyone saying, listen, I'm going to support Diddy whichever way this goes. Even after a lot of the major charges were dropped, you still didn't see people show up and say, listen, I support you, or come to the sentence. Just primarily people that were not celebrities and family members showed up on his behalf.
I think one thing that's important to establish here, and some people have been paying very close attention for the last few days, and some people have only paid a little bit of attention, but we're talking about, you know, 3 NBA figures and 3 kind of different buckets of allegations, with Terry Rozier of the Miami Heat, with Damon Jones, with Chauncey Billups. Can you break it down for us into those different categories, if you would?
Sure. We'll start with Chauncey, and he was named in an indictment that was centered on illegal poker games allegedly rigged and allegedly backed by the Mafia. These poker games would have used technology such as X-ray tables that showed the bottom of the cards. They wore contact lenses that could identify marked cards. And Bob got this technology and set up these games. And then, according to the feds, they needed to bring in the people to play, the big players, right? And so they used the NBA celebrities like Chauncey allegedly to attract players to come in and play. So he is accused of participating in those rigged poker games. The other indictment was involving Damon Jones and Terry Rozier. And I should say that Damon also was named in the poker indictment as well. But the other one was more centered on sports betting, and it goes back to a game in 2023 when Terry Rozier was with the Charlotte Hornets. Before that game, he allegedly told a friend that he was going to come out early of that game, not play very long, right? Ahead of the game, sportsbooks started detecting a lot of suspicious bets, a lot of betting interest on Rozier unders. This is a nondescript game in late March involving the Pelicans and the Hornets, two teams that were pretty much out of the playoffs. And all of a sudden, the sports was, why are we getting all these bets on Terry Rozier? Under points, under rebounds, under assists. They flagged it. The NBA looked into it. When Terry came out of that game, played about 9.5 minutes, took himself out of the game, citing a foot injury, and all those bets won. So the NBA got the information from the sports books and the betting integrity monitors, looked into it a little bit, and they just said they couldn't find.
It goes to show that the feds are monitoring everything if they pick up on things like this, right? In the NBA, also we hear rumors how they're investigating a lot of these major networks, radio stations, as far as payola, people paying to play, because all of these things are regulated, but who knew that they'd be looking at it this closely?
Find any evidence to really that was worthy of pursuing further for them. They're very clear that they say, hey, we didn't clear him. We just didn't have evidence that could say that, yes, he deserved to be suspended or whatever.
Right. Now, I mean, Sam, there is a long, sordid history in basketball. Point shaving scandals, gambling scandals, which I differentiate from point shaving scandals if it's, more about consortment with gamblers, et cetera. But the nature of the sport, right? 10 people on the court rather than 22 or 18. The nature of the sport, the kinds of prop bets that we have now, the way that one player can influence not just the outcome of the game, but the results of those kinds of bets, et cetera. How when you look at basketball and you see how it can be manipulated by the wrong elements, by gamblers, what do you see?
I see that opportunity, especially when you talk about these prop bets with unders. It's just easy to do that, and it's just so tempting. But when you talk about those type of bets, I don't understand, first of all, why you would allow those type of bets. And then why would you allow people to bet on any of these guys? When you start looking at Porter, I mean, this guy was a reserve player. He wasn't in the rotation. He played limited. And when you start talking about
two-way player, right?
Yes, and betting on guys, allowing people to bet on guys like that, you're inviting these type of things to happen. So I just think it's greed on some of these.
Okay, very good. Short thing 21 says DeRozan did a Terry Rozier recently, 7 points in 37 minutes. Wow. Okay, Michelle Lynn says no difference from throwing a fight and boxing. I still feel like the whole fight with Mike Tyson and what's his name, Jake Paul. I felt like Mike Tyson could have really taken him out. Maybe I'm wrong, but maybe Mike Tyson was just trying to give him a push. It was an inside deal. I don't know, but I felt like it was a true thing.
Sports betting operators, by allowing all of this, and they need to tighten this thing up, because Dave could tell you, if you only allow people to bet the over, that's when you could tell if a guy's going out really going for points and things of that nature. How do you bet the over on assists? Because I mean, you got to create an atmosphere to where these things are not allowed, and they made it too easy, in my opinion, with these under bets and allowing all of these players to be bet on.
And now with Porter, right, David, those unders on two-way players at least are not allowed, right?
That's correct. With the league partners, sports books that are partners with the league, the NBA went to them after the Chauncey Porter scandal and said, hey, let's not take under bets on two-way players or contracts. Now, there's a lot of different ways to bet these days, right? You can do prediction markets, you can do daily fantasy, and those don't have the same relationship with the NBA. So you can still find ways to do it. It's just not as easy.
Yeah, David, when, Adam Silver goes on the Pat McAfee show, right? Mm-hmm. And he talks about, we got to find a way to kind of rein in the prop bets. What levers does the NBA have to make that actually happen?
Not many levers at all. They do have rights, and some state regulators will allow them to come in and say, we do not want these type of bets and let them make their case for that to go through. They can also communicate with their sports books. They're partners with a bunch of sports book and really kind of, push them a little bit to.
Okay, Johnny says the simplest answer is usually right, in unison with Occam's razor, right? Is usually a simple answer.
Do that. I would say that the one thing that they could look at instead of just banning these prop bets at all, keeping the betting limits down low, right? If you're going to bet on a low level player or a nondescript game, you can't get $1,000 on these, players and these unders. Let's keep those bets down to, hey, $25. Reduce the incentive to try to manipulate things. And I think the better way to do that, instead of just banning them all, is just to keep the limits a little bit lower on these type of things and kind of, like I said, reduce the incentive to try to manipulate anything.
Now, look, the big picture, right, guys, is that this is the law of the land now. Since 2018, in the Supreme Court decision, sports wagering is up to the states. They want it, they can have it. 38 states have it. Not like the old days where it was just Nevada and horse racing, right, and dog racing, right? So this is the reality. The NBA embraced it early. The NFL embraced it late. But everybody's embraced it, and they see the way they can make money from these partnerships, how they can have an official role in it. But the big picture, at least from the NBA with Adam Silver, was always this is going to actually be good for integrity. It's all going to be out there in the open.
Yes.
Right? We're going to be able to detect suspicious betting patterns. But where we are now, a few years into this, not experiment, but this new reality, do you think, Sam, he was right? Or do you think there's just so much betting now and it's so widely available, it's so accessible that you're just going to have more problems, whether or not you're able to detect them?
Kashi says, where's your lunatic President Trump? Is he well? Please admit him in mental hospital.
Or they remain hidden.
I think the NBA got it right. I think Adam is right when he said this. Think about it. Look at the players that have been investigated. Look at some of the charges that have been levied. Look at being able to catch a young guy, a two-way player a couple years ago like Porter. All right. Players have to understand all this stuff is math. And they understand the people who bet, they have records on people who bet. They know who their gamblers are. And if all of a sudden Sam Mitchell, who never bets, all of a sudden start betting, thousands of dollars on something, they're going to flag me. They're going to investigate me. They need to know where my money is coming from. And then that money always has a trail. And I tell players this all the time. There is no way to get around this. That money has a trail, and that money is going to get paid out to somebody. They are going to catch you because to me, in my knowledge, in my understanding, for the sports gambling to work, they need to know all these things. I used to gamble in Vegas back in the day, and you can stop a pit boss at any time and say, how much am I up or down? And he could tell you to the exact penny. This stuff is a science. And so my advice to players and coaches, while you are currently playing, I don't entertain conversations of betting with anyone. If someone bring up that conversation to me, I shut it down. My advice would be, while you are an active player or coach or involved in the NBA, like I am.
So here's a good example of what I've often stated here on the channel. The government was able to trace these guys, and they were alerted because of the way they were utilizing money, wiring money, or what have you, betting. But Epstein had over $1 billion in wires going back and forth, and they say they don't have a clue where he really acquired his money from. There's something not right about that.
Just don't do it. It's just not worth it.
David?
Yeah, I completely agree with that point. I'll add that you hear a lot of people say, well, the NBA has partnerships with all these sports books. They're making partners with the sports books. And that is true. But the choice they had was the legalization of sports betting. We can either participate in this revenue and still endure the scandals, the inevitable scandals that were going to happen, or say, you know what, we don't want this revenue and still endure the scandals that are going to happen. These scandals are not happening because they have partnerships with the sports books. The sports books are catching them. Now I'll add, it's time for the sports books and the sports betting industry to go a step further. Okay, great job detecting this. Great job notifying this. Now, how can we reduce the opportunities that are presented to manipulate games? And is that whether we reduce the betting menus to reduce some of the, get rid of the prop bets that are very vulnerable? Or is that what we do with the betting limits, where we reduce them to such a small amount that it's just not worth to try? But something else, and Commissioner Silver and the team, the league memo today, kind of discussed that, saying, hey, we need to take another step past here, going forward, and really try to help prevent this stuff from happening.
I agree with you, David. Think about in the past, if these things were happening, you could suspect all you want to. You didn't have any proof.
Yep.
Now, when people go place these bets, it is going to be it's going to be registered, and there's going to be a record of it. Who made those bets? How much? Why? Where did that money come from? And where is it going to be paid out to? So there's a money trail, and I agree with David. There needs to be more done. But
do we have anyone in the audience that's familiar with these bets or betting on games or what have you? No. Cap says everybody should be getting their losses back from all books. Class action time. Okay, thank you for that.
But by allowing betting into sports, we now see these things. These things couldn't have been caught 20 years ago if they were happening. You could suspect it, but how would you catch it?
And that was always the argument, right? From Adam Silver. This is going to help us. It's not going to, we're not going to need the same kinds of breaks that occasionally law enforcement would get, you know, whether it was the Arizona State scandal back in 1994, et cetera. You could go back in history, Boston College, the Connie Hawkins, and go back further to, you know, Ralph Beard in the early 50s and Sherman White. So it's working. You're saying, David, you know, in that respect, you know, the allegations anyway against Terry Rozier, they've only come to light because of the transparency we have now?
Yeah, if this were to have taken place at an offshore sports book or at the local bookmaker down, you know, at the bowling alley, well, they're not going to open up their books and call the feds and say, hey, I'm running this illegal operation and this guy tried to, you know, place all these bets. Looks pretty suspicious.
I'm going to post a video from Terry's event that night that allegedly he's complaining about his ankle, but when you really watch it, you don't see, as most of us probably played basketball before, quite aggressively at times, right? There was no significant moment where you could see he fell, but there are two accounts basically when he grabbed his leg. So it's kind of sketchy if you ask me.
They're not going to do that. But the legal market, and there are regulations and stipulations that make sure that the sports books have to report this kind of things to it. So, and that way it is working. Now, are we producing these betting menus that are so big and vast that allow us to bet so much money on obscure things and obscure players? Are we almost incentivizing them to try to attempt these type of things? I hope not, but I fear that might be part of the case.
And there's a lot here. I'm sorry, Sam, go ahead.
I was just saying, with these allegations and things that are happening right now, and the focus is on this, I would be shocked going forward in any near time future that we have anything like this before. I would think guys would be afraid today. Look at the money that players are making now, that they're generating. We got players making $70 million are going to be a
Come
year.
on, Sam. You know that for some guys, enough is never enough, right?
Hey, I understand that, but I know one thing. Enough may not be enough, but zero is not.
They say Chauncey Billups allegedly makes $2 million a year. So there you have it. Why would you get caught up like this? We have to see how this develops.
And that's what you are risking to do that. And guys, you can't. That's why I find it hard to believe. If you're telling me Chauncey Billups sat down with underworld figures and they talked about a scheme of x-ray tables and x-ray. First of all, do you know how much money that type of stuff costs? I can only imagine. And to sit down and plan an elaborate scheme.
Okay, Tom says, I wanted to know if the Army versus the Navy game was boycotted by the players. Could any of the players get jail time? Great question. We have to see what happens in that regard. AI Med Spa says, risk it all for $20K, $30K. That's what I'm talking about, right? You're already making $2 million a year.
Like that, my heart would break in half to know if my friend actually did that.
Now, I want to be clear about that.
His legal fees are going to be astronomical. He's probably paid more than that down, right? Just to as a retainer toward an attorney or two. A lot of the guys who are coming into Brooklyn that are his co-conspirators have several attorneys.
That element of it with Chauncey Billups as the so-called face card, that's the allegation to lure whales, big players to these illegal mafia run, again, an allegation poker games. But, and I know you report about this, David, but again, just to be clear, there's the idea that somebody like Chauncey Billups, what's the idea? He's famous. He's Chauncey Billups. He's a basketball Hall of Famer. How does that get somebody who's got a lot of money to the poker table?
You know, one of his nicknames with the crew that was running these things, according to the feds, was Chum. And if you guys know what chum is, if you're a fisherman, you throw bait into the water to attract the bigger fish.
Right.
And so they thought his celebrity would bring these guys in. And there were text messages that have been in the documents in there about saying how, you know, oh, this guy is so wowed by just be sitting next to Chauncey Billups playing, he'll never figure this out. And they were taking these guys for tens of thousands of dollars per session.
I mean, that's
basically they're saying it's like the Madoff effect, right? They're using someone that's right there in the midst of it, someone you trust. You say, well, these guys would never do me wrong. So once you have a big name in the game, people feel, you know, more comfortable putting in their money, and therein lies the problem. AI Metzva says they will point at him like how many times they met up in person.
just amazing me, though. We're talking about people who I'm assuming, right, know what they're doing or should at the poker table, have a lot of money. It's like, okay, here's a famous basketball player that's going to lure me in.
Hey, guys, Dave will tell you this. Most of them guys that sit at those tables or participate in the games, they're not brilliant poker players. They're just people with money that have seen this stuff on television, the allure of playing in a backroom game. And that's what a lot of this stuff.
We saw the same thing allegedly happen with cryptocurrency, right? You had Kim Kardashian and all the other big names involved. And then there was some heat that came on. And that's probably not the case anymore.
I feel Dave will tell you, it's not that these guys are brilliant poker players. Most of the people that I know that gamble, they are awful. If I would advise them, don't do it. They are terrible.
Right.
To gamble at that level, if you're spending that money, they're doing it because they have time and money. It's not because they're good at it. And so, with the allure of doing something that's slightly, you know, that you shouldn't be doing, that you can get caught. And then let's face it, a lot of these guys with money, they don't want to go sit at a poker table in Vegas where people are taking pictures, standing out there watching, seeing their bad habits. We as professional athletes,
They don't want to get on a plane. They're
we
in
don't
New
want
York.
that stuff on display.
Yeah, or they're in the Hamptons or they're in New York. They don't want to get on a plane or drive up to Foxwoods or down to Atlantic City, right? I don't even know what the limits are on those tables. I have no idea. I know nothing about.
I like my money.
Gamble.
I work too hard for my money to go gamble. I don't gamble, so.
So, but there's some other issues here that I think are interesting as well, because we're talking about, you know, the prop bets, but we're also talking about the way that NBA teams do or do not report injuries honestly, right? We're talking about transparency, which opens these windows of opportunity for people with inside information about whether somebody's going to play, you know, between the morning shoot around and the game that night, et cetera. And Sam, you know this from the inside as a player, as a coach. If we improve the transparency, if the message is actually, no, you got to really tell us what's going on, who's playing, who's not playing, actual likelihood of playing, that closes another window for the bad actors, wouldn't it?
It does, Jeremy. But as a coach, man, look, sometimes we as coaches, we get too anal about all that stuff. Listen, my coaches will stay up all night if they think a team has thought up one play. As soon as they run that play, we know the play. We got it on tape. We know how to defend it. We know what to do. yeah, they need to be more transparent with this stuff. But at the end of the day, man, and Jeremy, it would help if they just make it mandatory. Any injuries at all, you have to list, because gamblers want all of that little tidbit information. Myself as a coach, I learned to wean myself off of that stuff, because in the big picture thing, it really doesn't matter. If that guy steps on the floor, if you think he's injured, you're going to attack him anyway. We see all these things. You can go back the night before and watch a tape and see if a guy got hurt. But I do think, to your point, if they really, really, really make it mandatory that you report all of these nicks and things and stuff, and David will tell you this, a lot of these things are game time decisions. When a guy go warm up, how does he feel? There's times that a guy has told me he think he could play. I watch him warm up, and I would pull him off the floor because I wasn't comfortable watching him play.
David?
Yeah, it's all about the timing, right? Because there's always going to be this buildup until when that information is released. And what Damon Jones was allegedly doing when he was an unofficial coach with the Los Angeles Lakers, before the injury report would come out, he was offering information to gamblers and saying, "Hey, $2,500, I'm going to tell you about a player who is not going to be
The allegation, right?
An allegation, right? He's allegedly selling this money, and that was exactly selling this information." And that's also familiar with the allegations.
So it seems like a lot of people are just digging in the pot and making money off of this gambling.
Against Rozier, his childhood friend who he related to said allegedly he was going to be out of this game against.
Really no different than insider trading in the stock market.
The Pelicans back in 2023, that childhood friend, according to the feds in the indictment, sold that information for $100,000 to two of the gamblers. And then as soon as that information got out, all this flood of bets started coming in. So it's going to be very difficult. Yes, transparency would be great, but when does that transparency happen? You don't know. It's a game time decision, as Sam might say. So you don't really know. It's kind of a tough spot, and there's always going to be people that have the information just a little bit earlier than everybody else.
Well, is there anything they could do, Sam? Like, I really don't even know how it works. I'm not around the NBA on a daily basis. Say, like, okay, does every MRI?
So just so you guys know, we have a team now. We're going to be covering this case, which has over 30 defendants in the case, right? But also we have Luigi Mangione's case coming up. So we'll try to navigate it all so you guys can understand what's happening in court down in New York City. So now we have Brooklyn and Manhattan courts to kind of cover.
Just put it on a website. You know, or I know there are HIPAA laws. I know there are all kinds of things that would prevent that. But how much are coaches really incentivized? You said at the end of the day, it might not make a difference to have every little advantage they possibly can, whether or not that's being honest or dishonest about the extent of injuries. How much does that really matter to them?
Guys, y'all won't even believe this, but in today's world with coaches, we absolved from that conversation. Back in the day when I played, I would sit down with the training staff and the doctors, and then I would meet with the coach, and I determined if I played.
This guy sounds like George Foreman.
The coach, when I coached last, I was told right before the game who was available. When I got to the arena, based on their warm-up. So if we had some guys injured, the trainer and assistant coach would take them out and work them out, and they would come back to me. The decision is taken off the coach's plate. The coaches are informed who they have to play that night. They are not even allowed to discuss with the training staff and the medical staff about a player's availability, because we don't want coaches putting pressure on players to play. So they remove the coaches from that decision. That decision is made strictly with the player and the medical staff. The coaches have nothing to do with it. As a matter of fact, we used to laugh about it, that the trainer would knock on the door about an hour before the game and say, "Coach, by the way, so-and-so can go, so-and-so can't go." And we would laugh and say, what happened to the day that the players used to knock on the door and say, "Coach, I can go"? But those days are done. The players don't get to make the decision. The coaches are removed from the decision. That decision is strictly on the medical staff.
You know, one element of this that I don't think has been discussed quite as much as some of these other things, because, you know, it's sexier poker games with these smart shuffling systems, et cetera, and, you know, and inside information, allegations about LeBron James, but the tanking stuff too, right? That's another part of this. And again, it's something that's kind of specific to the NBA. When you're talking about tanking and you're talking about load management. David, would you elaborate on what those allegations consist of here?
So we're back into the sports betting indictment here, and there was an unnamed co-conspirator number 8. And it was a former player and a current coach, an Oregon resident who allegedly, according to the feds in the indictment, fed a gambler information that said, hey, we're starting to tank to get, you know, we're out of the play. We're starting to tank, and relayed information. These guys are going to be out for this game, for a Trailblazers game. So that was what was put into this co-conspirator 8. The time frame.
Who, and to be clear, obviously everybody assumes that can only be Chauncey Billups, just to be clear. Right.
Correct. That's the playing career matches, the timeline matches Billups' his career as a coach and a player. So that's what now tanking. If you are sending players out there on the floor, your expectations are those players are trying their hardest to win. Now they may be your backups, they may not be your star guys, but in that individual game, you're expecting those players to try to compete as hard as they can. So that should be reflected in the odds of that game. The point spread of that game should
So the FBI director, Kash Patel, said that this is just the beginning, so we could rightly assume that there's going to be quite a few other people involved, maybe even coaches, maybe your favorite team. What do you think?
Reflect, these guys are out, and we will, adjust our odds for that. Now, when tanking comes in, the bigger thing is when you talk about futures bets, and future things are season win totals, over under on the Lakers to win 50 games or whatever it is, odds to win the NBA title, things like that. And I think that's where tanking kind of comes into play more than the individual games, because in my opinion, you're sending out players who are expected to play at their highest, give their full effort when you're doing that.
Guys, think about this. Coming into the season, there's a few teams that the media has already suggested they should tank, right? Not that they, right? Yeah, Washington. Look at this draft class coming up with Boozer and Darren Peterson and all these guys. You got 6, 7, 8, 9 guys that can change a franchise. So we're already saying they shouldn't win, right? So to me, it's crazy because that's part of professional sports. In all sports, in order to get better sometimes, you need to lose. So as if I was out there trying to place wagers on teams that Washington and some of these other teams that we know need to lose, how do you do that? And to David's point, you're a coach, a general manager, you're never going to tell a player not to try to win. Why? How can you tell me for 1 year not to try to win and then the next year, okay, I want you to win? No, it doesn't. We're not wired like that. To David's point, what you do, if you're not trying to win, it's simple. Play your young players. Develop your young players. When you play your young players and they're 19, 20 years old with very little or no experience, guess what's going to happen? They're going to get beat. Why? They don't have the experience to understand and know how to win these games. But this is the caveat. The point spread. How do you bet that? Because them young guys are going to play hard from start to finish. Why? Because they're trying to establish themselves. They're trying to make more money, get a better contract. So that's the thing to me. It is crazy to try to even bet on a team that you suspect is not trying to win, because those guys you put on the floor are going to play hard for 48 minutes.
Which brings us back to the idea of why prop bets are so attractive in a way, because, you've got the spreads, which are supposed to even everything out, right? The lines. And again, the prop bets, what percentage of the overall handle do they represent? What do we think, David?
It's roughly about 50%. It's grown significantly, 50%. And they're
50%
of the handle. and it's
In
grown
the NBA specifically.
in the NBA, especially the NBA. They're extremely popular in the NBA, and they're especially popular as parlay legs, right? A parlay, as you guys know, is a multi-leg bet. You got, what LeBron James over points, Anthony Davis over blocks, whatever, and you do that, and that's what people really like to do. So they'll put all these guys into a parlay, and that escalates the payout, right? I mean, you only have to bet $10, and now
Okay, for the sake of time, we have to move on to the next segment here with Chris Cuomo, and Stephen A. Smith.
Back with Stephen A. Smith. So what I'm told now, Stephen A. got into it like he was like, hey, I think that part of this investigation is what we're seeing political ramifications from the Trump administration. Kash Patel came at him, but that's because Stephen A. is so relevant that everybody wants to, he's like a big piece of government cheese right now. But what I want to hear, Stephen A., is how deep do you think the roots are in this? And do you think it spreads to other sports? Because that's what I'm hearing, is that this is not all of it. Well, this is just a little piece of it.
Well, athletes gamble, coaches gamble, some executives gamble, some owners may gamble. It's par for the course. And about 7 years ago, when the Supreme Court struck down a federal mandate prohibiting sports gaming, gaming in the world of sports, everybody's latched onto it, or at least an abundance of folks in sports league have latched onto it. The NBA itself is, as DraftKings and FanDuel as a sponsor, so we understand that. And when you look at it from that perspective, it's a very unfortunate story. I know all three guys. I'm friends with Chauncey Billups. I've known Damon Jones for years. And obviously Terry Rozier is a really good NBA player that's been around for a while, that's made over $150 million in his career. And
Wow.
so, to hear this news, it was kind of shocking. It wasn't shocking that folks were betting, because, you're on the plane rides and stuff like that. You're playing cards all the time, dominoes all the time, stuff like that. That stuff's
Imagine making $150 million and now you're facing the feds. That's crazy.
It's been going on for ages. But when you hear of something like this, and then you hear about the mob tied to it, and then of course, if you hear anything remotely associated with the integrity of the game being compromised, like, letting somebody know you're going to be coming out of a game and then they bet on it and the mob throw you $100,000 and stuff like that. So those are very, very serious allegations that the NBA is going to take very seriously, dating back to the Tim Donaghy situation with the official back in 2007, if I remember correctly, and what he ultimately pled guilty to. And I was very fond of, and I knew the former Commissioner David Stern, God rest himself, his soul, very, very well. He didn't play that nonsense. He took over that. But in this case, it's the FBI. And the league, to some degree, is at the mercy of Kash Patel, the FBI director, and the FBI itself. Now, Kash Patel could act like I'm off my rocker and, all of this other stuff. He can talk that nonsense all he wants to. I ain't got time to be getting into it with no FBI director. What I will tell you is that I said what I said. I meant what I meant. I'm not stuttering. I'm not saying in any way that the investigation is not on a legal standing, that it's illegitimate or anything like that. What I said was, for those looking for the president to spare them or to provide a helping hand of assistance, like he's prone to do from time to time for people he likes, don't expect that here. The protests, people not wanting to come to the White House, former star calling them, or no, not a former star, but a present star calling them a bum, this contest. Well, LeBron James called him a bum, stuff like that. The man is not going to.
Word on the street is that Stephen A. Smith is going to be running for president, folks. I also saw that The Rock, right? He's running up against, and also Kamala Harris. And I guess he's polling higher than her. Who would think that Kamala Harris is running again?
Forget. You and I doing this, more so you than me, of course. I'm not lying. You know how petty he can be. And if this inconveniences the league, who he believes have gravitated to a leftist ideology that serves to dog him at every chance. Listen, he doesn't have any problem inconveniencing them whatsoever. And that's exactly what he gave Kash Patel okay to do, period.
Yep, I think you're spot on. Stephen A. Smith, I love you and I thank you.
Okay, so a lot of people are looking to get pardons, I guess. So you're going to need a lot more of them. the way things are headed. So thank you guys for tuning in this morning for the News and Coffee edition. We'll be back on at lunchtime for news. So we have Eric in the building. Shout out to you, Eric. Good morning to you. We'll have hot topics at noon, news at noon. Stay tuned for a lot of shows we have coming your way. We're bringing on professionals as well to talk about finance and so forth, things to help people move and elevate in life. We have a lot of people struggling because of the changes, especially Donald Trump and his administration. A lot of people are frustrated, especially with the whole pointing fingers about the government shutdown, people not receiving their food stamps. People also, their housing is affected with Section 8. In fact, the government just put out a new mandate that they want to have a lot of questions, a lot of investigations to make sure you do not have illegal immigrants living on the dime of the Section 8, because a lot of people have Section 8. Perhaps they start dating a person that's a illegal immigrant. The government is putting their tentacles into all of that. And then they want to push Section 8 to states, and the state will have to deal with it. They tried to do that with health care. We know it was actually kicked back, but also they're going to limit the Section 8 to 2 years. That's one of the angles that they're taking with Section 8 as well. So a lot of people, I know certain individuals that's been on Section 8 a very long time, especially with my background with real estate. A lot of landlords actually look forward to Section 8 tenants because you have guaranteed pretty much rent every month. It's very rare that a person on Section 8 that would give it up, because once you get kicked off, you can't get back on. But this new administration, right, they're looking to make a lot of changes, and these changes are really affecting people who are already struggling to some certain degree. A lot of people I see in the comment sections, they say, oh, yeah, these people on Section 8, because they're bums, they don't want to work. 40 million people are on food stamps. And did you know that primarily the people on food stamps are in red states? So it's not really just a Democratic or a Republican thing. This is affecting the Americans, at large, right? So we'll see how all of this is going to affect Donald Trump, and also the midterm elections, and also elections in the future. I think it's going to be dramatic because I attend these No Kings protests to cover it so that you guys can see what's happening, sort of boots on the ground. And I'm starting to see a lot of people are quite frustrated. I saw maybe 7 or 8 individuals out of thousands. Over 100,000 showed up in New York alone. There were 7 million throughout the United States. But I saw individuals being pushed in wheelchairs, and they're holding their signs. I saw several people holding a walker, and they're marching down the street just to state their claim, folks. So we have to stay in tune with what's happening, and that's what we do here at Watching the World. We help you see what's happening. We're covering the storm. We're covering these trials, especially the ones that come through New York. I will be covering Carmelo Anthony, not the basketball player, but the young man who took the life of another young man down in Texas by unaliving him with a knife. You probably are familiar with that, but if not, stay in tune with us. We keep bringing you the details of these cases, and I actually attend court and come back. Some of you probably picked up on this channel with Sean Diddy Combs case. We're going to cover it all the way through and give you the inside information. Okay, good morning to you, Bordeaux Rising Shot. Jean Ray says, and welcome back. I remember you. Amen. They need to restrict except for handicapped and elderly. Okay, so you think that the services, the aid should be restricted even more. One of the things that people who receive government assistance often complain about is the stringent questioning and all of the information. It's almost like getting a mortgage. They almost want to know your blood type, right? Well, lo and behold, they're going to be asking for more. That's a part of the new restrictions as well, hoping that probably that would discourage people from wanting to get involved. And then if you do not answer with truth, you know what happened. You could end up in a paddy wagon, folks. So times are changing. We're seeing a lot of things. A lot of people are questioning what's happening in America and throughout the world. We seem like Project 2025 is a real deal. It's not just a hoax that a lot of people are saying. So thank you guys for tuning in to Watching the World. It's nice to have you here, Sharice. Guys, hit the like button, share, and subscribe. We'll be back at noon to bring you more hot topics so you can stay in the know. And definitely also throughout the week, we bring on attorneys. We also have a law professor to help us understand what's really happening at a higher level. Thank you so much. Good morning to you, Sharice. Thank you again. And Jean Ray says 40 million people on food stamps proves that they want to be on food stamps. Okay. All right. There's also an exchange, and I think the government knows that people sell their food stamps. So they're really, really trying hard to change the current system as most people know it. So thank you again for tuning in. I'll catch you later on today. But in the meantime, be well.
Different voices, but the same song. Loving a world where we all belong. Kindness leading the way, breaking the chains. In the symphony of love, the thing remains. Embracing diversity, brighter days in sight. Watching the world sharing love and light. Hearts beating as one in our peaceful flight. Colors of harmony, painting the night. United we stand in love's pure might. Watching the world sharing love and light. Hearts beating as one in our peaceful flight. The colors of harmony, painting the night. United we stand in love's pure might.